just had a quick look at my phone. It says that it's 26 degrees. It's pretty warm, isn't it? But I want to tell you that on a couple of Sabbaths in Egypt, I preached while it was 90 degrees. All right. So this is quite nice, actually, though I wouldn't mind taking my tie off. For any visitors we have today, and maybe I know that there are people online that keep writing and telling me that they're watching our service, as I want to welcome them as well. And just explain that we are going through a series in which we're looking at the church's values. If we just put them up on the screen. And just looking at them, here we go. We're looking at them through the lenses of a series of stories of Jesus, which begin in chapter 1, verse 41, and go through to chapter 3, verse 6. And there are 6 stories, and we are at the 3rd one today. The 2 stories we've done so far are the story of the leper who asked Jesus if he'd be willing to heal him. Second one was the paralytic who was lowered down through the roof. And today we're looking at the call of Levi. I want you to imagine that an inquirer goes up to Mark. Mark hasn't written his book yet, but inquirer's talking to Mark and says to Mark, "So you believe in Jesus? Tell me about him." And Mark says to him, "Well, Jesus came and said that he was God, and he came to show us what God is like. That's the good news." "Oh, okay," says the man. "So what's God like?" And Mark says, "Well, look, I think I'll tell you some stories." And he begins with the story of the leper who comes to Jesus. And the leper asks Jesus, "Are you willing to heal me?" And the inquirer says, "Whoa, a leper? That's bad news, isn't it?" And Mark says, "Well, Jesus says, are you willing, who told you?" Or in effect says to him, "Of course I'm willing to heal you," and reaches out and heals him. And then Mark turns to the inquirer and says, "What does that tell you about God?" And the inquirer, one possible answer would be, it tells us that he's kind, in spite of the man being a leper. Is that it? He's a kind God? Well, let me tell you another story, says Mark. The second one is a man who is lowered down through the roof while Jesus is preaching in a crowded house. And he's lowered down, and he's a paralytic. And the inquirer says, he would have healed him too. "Well, no," says Mark. "First of all, he forgives him." "What?" "Yeah, forgives him and then heals him." Did the guy ask for forgiveness? No. Just forgave him and healed him. And you can imagine the inquirer think, "Well, that's interesting. He's not just kind. His kindness appears to override his justice. How would that work?" But then maybe the inquirer says, "Well, of course, he's not that bad a sinner. I mean, he's a paralytic. Paralytics don't go around attacking people, breaking into homes and doing really bad things. So he was a little bit bad, and so this kind God overrides that and heals him. I think I understand your God." And Mark says, "Well, I'm not sure if you have. Let me tell you another story." And then he says, "He went out again beside the sea, and all the crowd was coming to him, and he was teaching them. And as he passed by, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, 'Follow me.' And he rose and followed him." Before we continue the analogy or the example of the inquirer asking, let me just share a few things about Levi. He's called the son of Alphaeus, which is interesting because just a couple of chapters later, Mark is going to give us a list of the disciples, and he refers to Matthew and then to James, the son of Alphaeus. Some people have wondered if Mark got things mixed up a little bit. Or is he a relative of James? Who is this Alphaeus? But if you can read the commentaries, there's no clear indication exactly if there's a relationship. But there may be. It's something just to store in your mind. But one thing we do know is Levi is a tax collector. And therefore, he is a constant reminder to the Jewish people that they are subjects of the Romans. Just you guys remember that. And even your own people are collecting off you for us Romans. We are in charge. Levi is a employee of Herod Antipas. Levi is collecting taxes on the western side of Lake Galilee, and the border between the tetrarchy of Herod Antipas and that of Philip on the east of the lake, this side belongs to Herod. So he is an officer in the employment of Herod Antipas. Let me tell you a bit about Herod Antipas. Jesus refers to Herod at one occasion as that old fox. He is warned by the Pharisees, you better get away from Galilee. In other words, they want him to go to Jerusalem. And of course, that puts him in their jurisdiction. But they said, Herod's going to kill you or something. And Jesus is not frightened. He says, you tell that old fox. I'll go where I want to go when I want to go. Secondly, this is the Herod that has either already or will behead John the Baptist. And thirdly, Jesus will appear before him at his trial. Pilate hears that Herod is in the area in Jerusalem, so he sends Jesus to him, trying to wash his hands of Jesus' problem. But he goes to Herod, and Herod wants to see him and has lots of questions, but Jesus doesn't say a word. Spurgeon, in his sermon on this passage, on the passage of Jesus and Herod, said that Jesus recognizes this man has already beheaded his messenger. Why would he say anything more to him? And just ignores him. Not a word. So Herod sends him back to Pilate. Herod Antipas and Levi are enemies of both the Jews and the kingdom of heaven. The last thing I want to say about Levi is I want you to notice in the text that he is sitting at the tax booth. Levi is not standing at a distance saying, I really wouldn't want, I don't want to do this. I really would rather I was with that guy, Jesus. He's not doing that. He's sitting at the tax booth and he's taking the dosh. There's a painting that I'd like to look at, which painted by Caravaggio, which I think captures it really well. The picture has Jesus on the right, and Caravaggio has changed the setting from the coast of the lake to something like sort of an inn. It's a shady place, it's a bit dodgy, and there's the group of tax collectors counting the money, and Jesus reaches out. It's a bit like the Michelangelo creation of Adam picture, and he is indicating, calling Matthew, come follow me. Now, most people believe that Matthew is the young man who's leaning over counting the money. He is not interested. And the older tax collector says, him? You're asking him to follow you? Caravaggio captures it really well. Mona Hooker, in her commentary on this passage, says, for Jesus to call ordinary fishermen to be his disciples was extraordinary. But to call a tax collector to gather him was nothing short of scandalous. This perhaps explains why Mark has told the story at this point. For the call of a notorious sinner to be a disciple must have seemed to Mark an act of forgiveness parallel to that of the preceding story, where he forgives the paralytic who comes down through the roof. There's a parallel. It is a story about saving grace. There are no penalties. There are no demands except to follow Jesus. Please note, and this is the topic of another sermon, maybe, Jesus only calls him to follow him. He does not call him to reformation. He calls him to a relationship. And I think there's a lot that we can learn about that. Okay, let's go back to looking at our values in the light of the stories. I've come up with 4 maybe understandings of the character of God from the stories that we've looked at to date. The first one, the leper, is, if this man is learning about God, the righteous God, first of all, he learns, our inquirer, learns that he is kind. Well, we want our God to be seen as kind. God cares. Now, he may not love the sinner, but he cares enough about sick people that he will heal them. But just because he heals that man does not mean that the man was forgiven. Does not mean he's saved. We serve a kind God who's fairly indiscriminate in how he treats people. It doesn't mean they're on his side. It doesn't mean he's called them to salvation. So that's one view. Then we move to the paralytic, the second story. And we find that here, he's not just caring, he throws forgiveness to sinners. I want you to understand the mindset of the religious people of Jesus' day, how they may have handled the story of the paralytic. How do you square the thought of a holy God with one who forgives sinners and apparently makes no demands? Let me suggest how this may have worked. Of course, he's a paralytic. Aren't all of us kind to disabled people? Aren't all of us kind to elderly people? I get a bit tired of people opening the door for me. But that's life, isn't it? Somebody told me about how to know if you're old or not. They said, fall over. And if people laugh, you're young. If they rush to help you get up, you're old. I'm in that category. But this second view of God is that God does care for sinners, but he will forgive them if they're not too bad sinners. As I thought about that this week, I thought, hey, that's good news for churchgoers. Not too bad, so we'll let you in. And then the third view is the story of Levi. And here the story of Levi just blows the other two theories out of the water. Because here it says God cares about sinners, even bad ones. And you can't get badder, if that's the word. You can't get worse than Levi in the minds of the Jewish people. Scripture does say he died for all. They don't have to accept him, but he loves them so much. He loved the world so much that he gave his son for all. Now, someone might say, well, he called Levi probably knowing his heart. And the book Desire of Ages confirms that. Jesus looked at Levi and knowing his heart, called him. It's a call to relationship, though. Still. That's the kind of grace that we need to have. I don't know whether people are going to respond or not. I'm not Jesus. But Jesus doesn't tell us, hey, I only call people I know will respond. He says, no, I called sinners. Full stop. But it's a call to relationship. That's the kind of grace to give away. Not the kind of grace, like so often is, I will give it to you if I can see you behaving. That's a bit like the Santa Claus picture. If you're good, Johnny, Santa Claus will bring you a present. God isn't like that. And I believe that we talked this morning in the Sabbath school class, thank you, Michael, about the Elijah message, the message that turns people's hearts. Just a story. A couple of years ago, when Cara and I were on our boat, we had pulled the boat into a marina in a little village called Barbie. I don't know if anybody's heard of Barbie. See, it's so small that it's only got a marina and a shop and a pub, of course. But we pulled this boat in, and we wanted to leave it there for 3 or 4 days. And I decided that I would take an evening walk up to the shops, which was 3K, and see if I could find the bus stop. So the next morning we knew exactly where to go. So I'm walking up this little road. There's no footpaths, and it's so isolated that about 5 cars passed me in that time. And just about a kilometer from where the map told me the shop was, I saw this man with one of these grabbers and a black bag, and he was picking up garbage and putting it in his black bag. And I thought, council worker. He'll know where the bus stop is. So I went up to him and I said, excuse me, can you tell me where the bus stop is? And he said, bus stop? Bus stop? I don't know where the bus stop is. He said, I only come up here once a week. He said, I live on the marina. My boat's there. And I said, you're on the marina? He said, yeah, so am I. I said, my boat's there as well. And immediately, boat people, as soon as you meet boat people, you become chums. And he said, wow, what's your name? And we shared names. And then he said, what made you think I would know where the bus stop is? He says, I come up once a week to get my shopping at the shop. I pick up one full bag of rubbish and dump it at the shop. Then I have my second bag on the way back. I do the other side, and I get a one full bag of rubbish, and I dump it at the marina. And he said, our world is dying. We are destroying our own planet. If this 2 bags in 1 week on an isolated little road, look at all the plastic, all the rubbish I've got. I said, that's terrible. He said, so you're like savior of the planet? And he laughed. He said, no, I'm not trying to save. I'm doing my little bit. Where I am, I'm doing my bit for the planet. I said, that's fantastic. He said, anyway, bus stop. I don't know where it is, but go up to the shop. It's about 1 kilometer. Ask them. They'll know where it is. So I did. And I walked up. And on the way, I thought, you know what? This guy's got to be a Christian. Must be a Christian. His care for the planet. Anyway, I found the bus stop, went back, and I thought I would find him. So I walked around the marina. There were about 50 boats, and I couldn't find him. I didn't know which boat it was. Anyway, I then got to our boat, and I got on board, and I was telling Karen about this experience, and she said, Llew, right now, I need to know what the power is that we've just plugged into shore, because I want to do the laundry, and the washing machine is 240 volts. So she said, can you find out what it is? I said, yeah, I heard the radio on the boat next door, so I'll go over. We're 1 meter apart. I step out. I knock on the boat, and up steps the guy. I go, whoa, it's you. He said, Llew, it's you. I said, I'm amazed. He says, oh, this is your boat. I said, this is your boat. Yes, yes, yes. I said, I have something to tell you. He said, what? I said, I'm a Christian, and I believe that God is going to make a new world, and he's not making it for people who are destroying it. He's making it for people who are trying to save it. And that means you are in the kingdom. He looked at me, and his mouth kind of dropped. He said, kind of like the meek get the earth? Yeah. And just then Karen called and said, Llew, I want to know what voltage it is. So I asked him, what voltage? He said, 240. So I said, got to go and help Karen. Ran back, and we sorted the laundry. Next morning, we got up early. We were away for 3 days. We came back, and we were about to take our boat out when the guy in the other boat jumped out and says, you're leaving? I said, yeah, we were booked till today. And he said, let me help you. So he came over, and we got all the ropes untied. And then he said to me, Llew, I need to tell you something. I said, okay. He said, up until 3 days ago, I believed that all Christians are judgmental hypocrites. I am an atheist. And I had that view until 3 days ago when I met you. You've changed my understanding. And all I did was offer him grace. We communicate by email. But amazing grace can change people. And this man, Levi, sat there, and amazing grace came to him without asking, without being interested, but amazing grace changed him. So that's the third view. But there's a fourth view. Let me read it to you. As he reclined at table in his house, many tax collectors and sinners were reclining with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. And the scribes and the Pharisees, when they saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, said to his disciples, why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? My sermon title. And Jesus, when Jesus heard it, he said to them, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners. This is the fourth view. The third view was a God who offers grace to people who will respond. The fourth view is that God wants to eat with sinners. Why would he do that? This is the only time in the series of stories when the Pharisees asked the question, why? Okay, we got it that you're kind and you heal people. We got that. Okay, we got it that you forgive people who are not too bad. We got that. And we got it that you may have offered the kingdom to people who are ready to receive it. But why then would you go and eat with them? And Jesus says, I came to do that. That's my whole purpose. This is not secondary. My core value is not, I'll like you if I like you. My core value is not, if you respond, I'll help you. Or my core value is not kindness. My core value is, I love you to pieces, sinner. I love you. So much so that I will come and eat and dine with you, even if some of you are not going to accept me. You see, separation defined righteousness in the religious minds of the day. Separation defined righteousness. And I am concerned about some individuals who believe we have got to get out and live in northern Scotland or far Ireland or West Wales because we got to get away from the bad people. Because separation defines righteousness. And all the no-nos, because it defines righteousness. Listen to the Pharisees' prayer. I thank you that I am not like other people, like this tax collector. The Pharisees look at Jesus and they see a scandal. They cannot give an explanation for why he would eat with people like that. And the reason why is they cannot understand the quality of the value of love that he holds. And Jesus remains true to the values of his character. By the way, I want you to think about, can God act contrary to his character? The people who believe he is loving, but he also hates people, have got a schizophrenic God. And actually, if purity is more important than kindness or love, then purity is the core value, not love. Can we go to our values again? Yeah. Jesus eats with them. And to the religious people of the day, this is a scandal. It is a scandal so deep and so contrary to what the church people of the day thought that they eventually come to the conclusion that he must be demonic-led. Has to be. Look at him. And they choose Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies. It's like the dirtiest, impure thing you can imagine. And so they're looking at Jesus and he's so impure that Beelzebub has got to be the one who's leading him. Jesus, the scandal. But in heaven's eyes, Jesus is not the scandal. The church that holds to these principles but will not cross over or in the pews and work with one another or talk to each other or serve each other willingly, lovingly, no matter what their differences are, they are the scandal. When we live our values at one of those lesser levels, we are the scandal. This principle crosses all boundaries, culturally, ethical, theological. Just crosses them and says to each other, I will come and eat with you. I love you. I will not go and eat with my group and leave you. I want you as well because that's what I want to be. That's what my Savior was like. In the book Desire of Ages, it says, men who profess faith in the truth, but it does not make them sincere, kind, patient, forbearing, heavenly minded. The truth is a curse to its possessors. And through their influence, it is a curse to the world. Do you see that? No wonder people in the New Testament brought up, or everybody's spoken bad of because God has spoken bad of because of us. Let me finish with two illustrations. There's a humorist called Dave Berry. And on his website, it's quite old now, so he's probably no longer there. But he lists 50 things that took him 50 years to learn. I'm not going to read all 50, but I'm going to read a few. First of all, never, under any circumstances, take a sleeping pill and a laxative on the same night. That makes sense. It's not that funny. Secondly, there is a very fine line between a hobby and mental illness. Yeah? Ask any spouse whose husband is a football fanatic. Thirdly, never lick a steak knife. Makes sense. Fourthly, the one thing that unites all human beings, regardless of age, gender, religion, economic status, or ethnic background, is that deep down inside we all believe that we are above average drivers. Okay, but here's the one I want you to get. A person who is nice to you but rude to the waiter is not a nice person. Get that? Niceness that is nice to one person but not to another is not niceness. That's the nature of kindness. It is indiscriminate. The love, compassion, and generosity is for everybody. That's what we as a church stand for. Second illustration comes from Gandhi. Story is told about Gandhi about to catch a train, and he's on the platform, and these are the trains where you have to grab a handle and pull yourself up. Mind the gap. But he's standing there, and he's talking to people, and the train is starting to move. It's starting to move along the platform, and Gandhi is kind of walking with it. And now it's getting it so fast that he's got to jump now or never. So he lunges out for the bar and pulls himself up. But in doing so, one of his slippers comes off and falls on the track. And immediately, what does Gandhi do? He takes the other one off and throws it to land near it. I'm not sure I would have done that. And somebody would ask Gandhi, why did you do that? And he said, so that the poor man who finds it has a pair of shoes to wear. Is kindness instinctive for you? When I thought about Gandhi's answer, I thought, yeah, that makes sense. But my train would have been, a quarter of a mile down the track before I figured out he's better off with 2 shoes than me having 1. Kindness is enduring because the character of Jesus becomes embedded into your character. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to take our values and embed them into our characters and into our culture as a church. Is it easy? Of course it isn't. It's the hardest battle each of you have to do. I listened recently to a talk by Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and he touched on the character trait of humility. And he said, the trouble with this character trait is as soon as you think you've achieved it, you haven't. And that's one of the problems of developing character. We never get to the point we say, we've got it, guys. But we ought to be able to look around at each other and say, you know what? We all fluff up every now and then, but I love the way so-and-so and so-and-so are getting together and talking together and saying, how can we work together? Actually, you can't change your character. All you can do is reflect on it and think about it. And I had hoped, I met a young lady on the Master's Leadership course. I chatted to her, she talked about developing her values, character values. I said, how are you doing? She said, Llew, it's so hard. And she said, I've got this journal, and she showed me her journal. And she said, I'm working at the moment on grace, and I fail in my journal entries. But look at these quotes. Look at these inspiring stories of Jesus and quotes. And I was reading through her journal. This is amazing. I said, could I read it? She said, Llew, I will make you a copy. and send it to you. And I had hoped to have had it to read some things to you this morning. But I emailed her at the beginning of the week and she said, Llew, I'm in Turkey. I'm on ADRA work and I just don't have time to do it right now, but I will. I hope to share it with you sometime. But as we chatted, she said to me, Llew, in the end, you know what? You got to keep looking at Jesus. You got to keep looking at him and seeing his beauty and longing to be like him. And that's what we're doing in the stories. And this is what Paul says. We all, with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. For this comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. It's my prayer that we as a church and we as individuals, and me, keep looking at Jesus, keep beholding his beauty, and allow the Spirit to change us. Amen.